Exhausting.
It's just a lot of work. And then eventually, and you get this like real good burst of growth early on. You're like, yeah, this is awesome. And it's climbing. And you're like, yeah, I can see the grass is greener. I'm going to have
2 to 4
podcast sponsors.
Is 100%
15
growth.
Yeah. And I'm going to have, 15 revenue streams from my podcast, and I can quit my day job and like, right. And then this happens. Flatline.
Yeah.
Welcome to Clicks and Bricks Podcast. We talk about the entrepreneur mindset.
If you get one shot at this, what kind of shot are you going to take?
If we forget who we are, they're going to forget who you are.
And you've got an adversity story that's out of this world.
Everything from that Main Street brick and mortar to that billion-dollar manufacturer.
Collin, can you introduce yourself to the audience, a little about who you are, where you come from, and a little bit about SalesCast?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me on, Ken. Appreciate it. My name's Collin. I'm the co-founder and CRO over at SalesCast. We're a revenue-first podcast agency. A little bit about me. This is the fourth company that I founded. My first company, I grew from 0 to 5 million in annual revenue in 26 months. Started that business with my wife back in 2010. And then I recently exited a unified communications company that scaled from 0 to 6,000 users on that platform. I enjoy podcasting, sales, community. I live in Los Angeles with my wife and my 4 kids, and our little puppy. Yeah. So
4 kids in LA. That's got to be expensive.
Expensive.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. You said 24 months. What was that number in 24 months that you scaled?
Yeah. So the first company we started was in 2010. And we scaled that from 0 to 5 million in annual revenue in 26 months.
That's pretty impressive.
$0 spent on marketing, all fueled by sales.
All fueled by sales. Okay. Yeah. So in your mind, for the audience out there that's listening, and we have this conversation all the time, what is the difference between sales and marketing?
Yeah. I think marketing is to drive awareness, right? And I'm not a marketing expert, right? The way that sales and marketing works best is when there's alignment, right? Like sales can help marketing do a better job if they're reporting back to them what they're hearing in the conversations that they're having, because then marketing can tailor their messaging to match that, right? Because a lot of times, at least initially, right, whenever you launch a new marketing campaign or initiative, there's always a ramp up period, right? There's a ramp up period of like, we're going to test this. We're going to collect some data, then we can make better decisions. Well, sales, as they're communicating with marketing on a regular basis, can eliminate marketing having to make a lot of assumptions.
Absolutely.
Right? And same thing, salespeople can do a better job if they're getting, talking and getting support from marketing, right? They're both jobs of sales and marketing is to drive revenue. So they're not that different. They just do it in a different way.
Yeah. I look at your marketing efforts are finding potential clients, making them product aware, right? Hopefully they're problem aware already, right? If you have to convince your audience that there is a problem, you probably have a problem. Right? So you got an audience that's problem aware, and you're letting them know about your solution to that problem, right? And then the sales job is to convince that person that this is the best solution for that problem once you get them on the phone and things like that. Is that a rough summary?
Yeah, I would say that's pretty accurate. Yeah.
Right. And on both sides of the fence, the better each job does, I think helps the other one. I hate the fancy the marketing that feels like a lie, the bait and switch marketing, right? And unfortunately, in today's world, and I'm sure that actually let's back up a little bit. What does SalesCast do specifically?
Yeah, so we manage podcasts that are focused on driving revenue.
Okay.
So some might call us a podcast agency. I don't really like that term because most people don't hire us just to create content. That is something that we do because it's a fully done for you service. But the people that we work with are trying to tie their podcast to a business objective, or they have a goal for their podcast itself to be a business unit. And that's really our specialty, is figuring out how to drive revenue, figuring out how to drive growth so that it can drive revenue. And really, I hold the title of CRO at SalesCast. We're a team of 20, right? Not a lot of companies with 20 people have a CRO, but I wear that hat when we're engaging with all of our clients, because my job is, how do we get this thing to drive revenue? My co-founder is more of a creative person. He's more of the content side of the house, of making awesome content through the shows and repurposing it in many different ways.
Right.
So that's what we do at SalesCast. And then we also do some other podcasting services as well, but that's primarily our focus, is fully managed, done for you, revenue focused podcasting.
Okay. Well, let's just dive into that a little bit, and I'll lift my skirt just a little bit, right? So I run a podcast, Clicks and Bricks, and you're a guest on it today, and we focus more on video. And I also own a operated data center. I'm a part owner in that, and a couple other businesses. And you're on this podcast today. I didn't charge you anything to be here. It's totally free, but then you'll have some press release options at the end of this, right? And that's how we get some revenue. But we're also creating relationships, and I don't have no idea what kind of deals we might get to work together on in the future. And I do this podcast to create these kinds of relationships and also create value for the watchers, right? That's why I do it. But what are some of the other, like, if there's, 2 or 3 like podcasts that you're aware of, or industries that could, if they adopted a podcast for their business, what are some of the, 2, maybe 3 different objectives to get revenue that a person, a manufacturing company could kick off a podcast, right? How would that benefit them?
Yeah. So there's a lot of different ways to drive revenue through the podcast. I mean, the last time I looked at it, there's like 10 different revenue streams that you could have from a podcast. And my personal favorite is pretty much what you mentioned there, is building relationships with people that can drive revenue for your business. And it doesn't have to be done in a sleazy way, or like hey, I only invited you here because I want to sell you something. I've had that done to me before. And the first time it happened, it really did, it made me upset. I was like, man, this guy only invited me on here because he wants to sell me something.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I can tell you from experience, that does not work, because somebody did it to me and I tried it at first. That was the original intent for Clicks and Bricks, was to actually have a sales intention. And until we pulled it away, we were getting 2 or 3 viewers, right? But when we really said, screw it, we're just going to focus on content and stories from entrepreneurs and founders, things changed. Yeah.
Now, the interesting thing is if it's done right, it does work, right? You actually sell more by not trying to sell, right? Like the exactly what you just said is like, hey, you're here to have conversation, highlight people, lift them up. The bottom line is if you can give people an experience, they're naturally curious. Like even me at this point, like I don't know what mygosite.com is, but I'm curious, right? And if it can solve a problem that I have, and it's somebody that I had a good experience with, I'm much more likely to buy that thing, whatever it is, which I don't know yet, but I'll find out soon.
Right.
And so the thing was there is that was like really when we were just starting SalesCast, when I had that experience, and I get all my best ideas in the shower. So I was just getting out of the shower and I was like, you know what? That was actually a great idea. It was just poor execution. And so if you really focus on highlighting people, lifting them up, giving them a good experience, if you can solve a problem for them, they want to work with you. Or if you spend 30, 45 minutes curious about them, asking a lot of questions about them, letting them talk about themselves, at the end, when you're done with this recording, they're naturally going to be like, Ken, tell me a little bit more about what you do.
Right.
We've been talking about me for 45 minutes. I'm tired of talking about me. Tell me more about you.
Having a podcast or a YouTube channel, anything like that, where you're interviewing people that are just in line with your business. It doesn't have to be a direct target, but you're also building your own brand. You're building some kind of confidence. If somebody then goes and Googles you, you're going to have hundreds of videos or audio clips and stuff out there. So that also on that initial meetup, if they do any research, you're also kind of solidified in your marketplace, right? For me, it was the easiest way for me to create massive amounts of content about business owners. Right. And 90% of my customers in my day job are the business owner, right? That $5 to $20 million business owner.
Now, here's the problem is there's 2.8 million podcasts out there today.
Yes.
And that's growing every single day, right?
Yes.
But there's a lot of people that are like, oh, podcasting. I seen somebody put something out the other day where they're like, podcasting is oversaturated. And that's absolutely not true. And because I can tell you that we geek out on the podcast data, we manage over 75 shows, and that's cumulative of almost 1 million downloads a month. So we see the things that are happening just based on that, sample size there. And out of the 2.8 million podcasts, only 50% still release episodes. So half of the people that start a show fail or stop at some point.
Yes.
Most of those folks never even make it to episode 10. Okay. So think about that for a second. Now, the people who stick with it for any given time, it's not that hard to even just get to the top 10% of a podcast category, because podcasting is so much less competitive than YouTube. It's really hard to build a YouTube following.
Yes.
If you started YouTube as a strategy for your business 10, 12 years ago, like you're probably in a really good place. You're not worried about leads and revenue. That's where podcasting is today, because the top 10% of shows get 90% of the total listenership.
Right.
So what that means is there's more demand than inventory of really good quality shows that actually stick around.
Right. So if I'm a business owner today, and let's say I don't want to hire SalesCast, I just want to start a podcast, and I've got some numbers in my head, and they want to start a video podcast and then also have it on all of the different platforms, right? Which is today pretty simple to do. There's lots of tools out there that publish it to Spotify, Pandora, and all of those places, right?
Yeah.
Lots of tools out there to do the what seems to be tedious work of publishing it everywhere. That's pretty actually simple. What kind of budget would a person have, assuming they're going to use in-house talent, right? The CEO or the marketing guy is going to do all the like he's going to be the star of the show. Just in equipment. Forget the room that they got to design and all that stuff. Just cameras, lights, microphones. What do you say the average budget is to get started for, a decent mid-quality podcast?
Yeah. Let's be real. It may not be a mid-quality podcast, at least at first.
No,
but
it's going to be
just to get started. Just to get started. Like, all in. I mean, you can literally get everything you need for under $500. Okay. Like, let's say, for example, this mic that I have here, I spent about $200 on it. Now, you don't have to get this mic. There's plenty of mics that you can get for $80, like the Blue Yeti. All right. Camera. I have nothing fancy. Ken, you have a way better camera than me, and I do this every single day. I spent $100 on my camera. Okay. So let's just say right there, about $180 for your camera and your mic. All right. Let's assume you don't have to do anything fancy with your setup. Your setup's good enough. You can use that. All right. You need something to host your podcast. A lot of people go with Anchor because it's free.
Right.
All right. Spotify owns it now. I don't really love the tools that they have on Anchor, but
we're currently migrating away from Anchor, right? The statistics are kind of challenging. Yeah.
So all of our clients and people in our podcast community, which is 400 plus podcasters, use Simplecast. Okay. Simplecast, you can spend $15 a month and you will have a great host with good data that has dynamic ad insertion so that you can promote your company as a sponsor or whatever you need to do. It's well worth it. If you're going to spend money on something, get a good quality host that has dynamic ad insertion. It doesn't have to be Simplecast, but just make sure it has dynamic ad insertion. It's important because if you promote your business on your podcast, which you absolutely should, you don't want to have to redo your intro or do it one-off every time or do it live. Most of your listenership from your podcast is always going to be from older inventory episodes. So if you look at your downloads for an entire month, in a lot of cases, 60 to 75% of the listenership in that month is from episodes released in previous months. So if you can't promote on those, it's a huge missed opportunity.
Okay. So I'm gonna absorb the heck out of that and talk to our team about where we're moving to. And now my advice here, and I'm a guy that operates a hosting company for a living, and I've seen a lot of guys go out and say, I'm going to do the WordPress plugin and I'm going to make my own host and do all that stuff. Being a person that operates a hosting company and has done this, made an attempt to do this podcast thing multiple times before I've had any kind of actual success. I don't recommend using WordPress unless you want to spend $10,000 in development to really get it to where it really, really needs to be.
Yeah.
Unless you're just a WordPress nerd that really wants to dive in and do that. How often do you see people make that mistake of saying, I'm not going to use that $15 tool. I'm going to use this $10 a month website and do it myself? And is that detrimental to them, or does that get there with the Blurberry plugin or whatever?
I've really never seen anybody go the WordPress route, but I'll have to tell you, if you're going to spend $10, like you can spend $10 at other places like Spreaker or Megaphone or all these other places. Right. Now, these places don't have the dynamic ad insertion. So spend $15 and be able to promote your business across all episodes. All right. So if you're going to spend some money, that's a good place to spend it, right? Right now, we're only talking about $100 for your camera, $80 for your mic. We're $205 in here, right? If we're talking about a podcast budget to get started. Right. Now, let's say
I know a guy that does a TV show on the public access cable show locally. He uses his Apple phone to shoot the video.
Yeah.
So you can use your phone 100%. If that's all you have, you can get started with just your phone.
Yeah. I mean, the phones on cameras these days are great. Yes. You can easily, get a stand and connect it to your computer. Definitely doable. Or, if you have a Mac, if you're on a Mac, like in a lot of cases, the Mac camera is good enough. You don't even need to buy a webcam. So let's assume you're a PC person and you do have to buy it, right? And I don't know, maybe you have an old phone and you're like, my camera's not that great. I dropped it 15 times. It's a little bit cracked, whatever the case is, right? So $205, right? Now let's assume you have like somebody who's creative on your team. You're going to need artwork for your show. You're going to need an intro and an outro, both in audio and video format. Right. Okay. Maybe you don't have those people. Go on Fiverr, Upwork. It's not going to be the greatest work ever, but it's good enough to get started. Right. Maybe you spend a couple $100 there to get those things done. Right. At that point, the only thing that you need is something to record your podcast. You can absolutely use Zoom, some other options for higher quality video and audio. You can spend about $30 a month and you can use something called riverside.fm, and highly recommend it for better quality.
Do you like
can
that?
Also
is
use
it better quality than Zoom?
Oh, yes. It's like night and day. Yeah. You're going to get
but
full
the negative there is it
4K.
Doesn't have the integrations, right?
You don't need necessarily any integrations. You're going to get, they even have some editing tools.
Really?
Our team doesn't use any of the editing tools, but they have some tools built in to build like really nice clips for TikTok and Instagram stories and reels.
Beautiful.
And they also have like adjusting the levels and the audio, and like you can get pretty fancy with just that and save yourself some time. So that's also another great place to spend a little bit of money.
Right. So the average podcaster stops at episode 10, right? And I have to say that I've probably got 10 YouTube channels with under 10 episodes and a couple podcasts with under 10 episodes. Yeah. This show, we're at 100 and March 31st, we did 180 episodes we released. And we're committed to 250 more episodes. So why do you think it is that the average podcast stops at 10? So when you start, you're super passionate about this, right? This is a great idea that you had in the middle of the night. This is going to change your life and all these things. And I don't think anybody goes into it thinking, man, I'm going to be rich tomorrow by doing this podcast. Why do so many people fail that quick in this game?
Well, I'll tell you, I know exactly what it is. Okay. So when you launch a podcast, you typically have this honeymoon phase where you're really excited about it. You're passionate about it. You're willing to spend endless hours of editing and finding the perfect clips and removing the ums and the ahs and the fillers, the bad parts of the conversation, and like just really polishing this baby of your podcast, right?
Which is exhausting.
Yeah, which is a lot of work. And then eventually, and you get this like real good burst of growth early on. You're like, yeah, this is awesome. And it's climbing. And you're like, yeah, I can see the grass is greener. I'm going to have
2 to 4
podcast sponsors.
Is 100% growth.
Yeah. And I'm going to have, 15 revenue streams from my podcast, and I can quit my day job and like, right. And then this happens. Flatline. Yeah. It happens to everybody. Now that flat period, sometimes it might last a month. I've seen it last up to 6 months. Most people give up in that phase because they're like,
Right.
this sucks. Doing all this for nothing. But if you can outlast that period, and I can't give you an exact answer of what that period's going to look like, eventually, then you get some slow, steady growth.
Right.
Okay. Now, you might need to change some things. You might need to improve the content. You might need to be more strategic about your guests. But if you're constantly looking, you might need to do better show notes. You might need to do better titles that are more SEO driven and have a good hook to entice people to listen. You might need to educate yourself. You might need to seek out some resources.
Right.
There's some things that you'll need to do to get out of that flatline period.
Absolutely.
But most people do nothing.
The word hook, so I want to throw it out there. If you're looking to know about hooks better, Hook Point, the book, is phenomenal. Helped me a lot with looking at my content and figuring out better hooks, right? And how important that hook is.
It's very important because people scroll through. I mean, if you get somebody in a good episode, then they're just going to, people binge listen to podcasts and
Passively.
just like like Netflix, right? So they find a good podcast. They might consume, if they're on a long flight, they got a lot of downtime. You might become part of their regular routine. Hey, every time I'll hop on the treadmill, every time I take the dog for the walk, I'm going to tune into this show. People are plugging you into their ears, giving you their, for the most part, undivided attention.
Right.
And there's so much trust that gets built through people feeling like they're part of that conversation.
Right. So the topic of consistency is wildly important, and we get information on both sides of the fence, right? The guys from Think Media say only post good quality content and take more time building that content and publish it. And Gary Vee says, no, 37 pieces of content every 7 minutes. In reality, right? And I think that the truth lands somewhere in between those two, right? Is the sweet spot. Yeah. What is your take on frequency and consistency? How important is that versus the guy that says, hey, I'm going to put out, episodes whenever I get it done, right? It might be Tuesday this week and, 3 weeks later and then 3 episodes in the next week, right?
Yeah.
How important is that?
So consistency matters a lot, specifically on the podcast platforms. On social platforms too, yes, but specifically on podcast platforms, because if you don't release an episode for 2 weeks, then it stops pushing it to the device, right? So if I subscribe to Clicks and Bricks podcast,
right,
but Ken gets burnt out and he's like, I just need a break. This podcast thing's a lot of work,
right?
And you don't release an episode for 2 weeks, well, it stops pushing me a notification saying, hey, there's a new Clicks and Bricks episode you might want to check out.
Oh wow! So 2 weeks is the killer.
So then I've got to actually go out of my way to go back in to the Clicks and Bricks podcast and resume those downloads. Okay. And that's specifically on Apple, which has pretty much the lion's share of, podcast listens. Yeah. And so that's important, right? There's ways you can do to get around this, right? Like even if you just hop on for 5 minutes and say, hey guys, Ken here, going on vacation, I'll resume in, 2 weeks, right? Just get something out.
You just saved me because we haven't released an episode since the 31st of March, and we're not going to do another one until May. So
don't do it.
Took a month off, and I'll do a quick little episode right there in the center just to keep that algorithm
Do a solo
going.
episode. Solo episode. Here's some tricks for Clicks and Bricks. All right. You can do a solo episode. You can take an older episode, give it a new title, republish it.
Okay.
Or you can do a little compilation. Pick 5 of your best favorite episodes, grab the little short clip fire moments, put it as a compilation and drop it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. That advice is probably huge for me. I don't even know what benefit I'll get from that, but I will definitely be working on a quick solo episode probably tonight. As I look over like, oh crap, we're going to work late today. So that is really cool. Now that's the consistency factor. Now, how about volume? Does it matter as long as it's consistent and weekly or?
Yeah. So I would say with the podcast platforms specifically, weekly is recommended. Now, look, if you go 2 a week, you're going to grow at a much faster pace.
Right.
If you're crazy like me,
I do 5 a
and
week.
you want to do 5 a week,
Yep.
you're going to grow even at a faster pace. But you don't want to sacrifice quality for quantity, right? Because if you're putting out a bunch of stuff just to put it out, then people are going to leave. So you're going to get new listeners, but you're not going to retain the listeners that you're gaining. So you're going to be taking, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, right? Or whatever, 1 step forward, 2 steps back.
Which for me, I don't have to think about it too much because my guests are my content for me. So that's why we did the guest interviews, right? Because it was a good way to have new content every single day and do these interviews. Now, we do an episode every day. So we hire, you talked about artists and Fiverr and all those. We hire 2 companies, one called Rockstar Creative and the other one's called Floxy. And they do a lot of our artwork stuff for us, right? And there's just these, you pay $400 a month and you got unlimited design work, right? You just kick them the work and they kick it back to you by like 48-hour turnaround. So it works pretty well. But so that person, he's 10 podcasts and he's on that flat plateau and he's getting ready to quit. What do you tell him to keep him moving?
Keep going. Just keep going.
Right. How do you convince somebody at that point? Or is it not something you can convince them of? If they're done, they're done. And you find like, it's just not worth trying to convince them.
Yeah, it's a tough thing to answer, right? Because everybody's different, right? I mean, some people have more grit and tenacity than others, right? And so some people are like, I'm going to keep going till I figure this thing out. And like, they might be at 100 episodes and still be like, I have not made 1 red cent, but I'm still going. Like I meet those people. Right. And so, and then there's some people that are like, I haven't made $1 million and I've already put out 12 episodes. What the heck's going on? Right. Everybody is different, but like, if you can outlast, the thing is because most, half people give up, you can outlast a lot of people. So as people are quitting and you're continuing to move forward and continuing the activity,
right,
that's when you'll start to see growth. Right. So if every time somebody gives up and, you're now 50 episodes in and you're starting to own that category or that niche that you're in.
Absolutely. It's huge. Now, on the other side of that fence, I've got a great idea and I want to do a podcast and I think I really want to do it. Before they make the investment of, buying a camera, buying a thing, getting an LLC, doing all of that stuff to make it kind of legal, and which is an investment, right? It's a cash investment, it's a time investment. And I think sometimes I'm a super geek, so I tend to overbuy my equipment early and then figure out how to use it later. Are there any tips and tricks or things that they should do before they go all in on this idea?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends your level of commitment and maybe, is this a side hustle? Are you a business owner? Are you trying to create a separate business unit? Does this support your current business? I would recommend having something that supports your current business, right? Trying to start a podcast as a totally separate business unit while you have another business to run doesn't make a lot of sense because they're sort of competing for your attention and you're always going to go where the money is, right? If you already have a business that's started, that's, somewhat successful, the podcast is always going to take a back seat. So see if you can figure out how to align those, right? Is this a way for me to land more clients? Is this a way for me to, build content for my business? Is this a way for me to create partnerships or things like that? So figure out how to align the podcast with some business objectives, and then they can work together rather than sort of, competing for your attention.
Is building my personal brand a justifiable reason inside your business?
Absolutely.
Wonderful.
Absolutely. I mean, there's some people who just do not want to use their podcast as a sales motion at all, but they want to be elevated in their space as a thought leader, and a podcast is a perfect place to do that.
Right. Which helps with passive sales down the road, right? It helps with all kinds of things, right? So, for instance, like I go to a lot of small business expos, and because I had the podcast, I'm starting to get asked to speak at those events, right? Now I've got a captive audience of business owners that I can talk to in person, and they get to see me on the podcast and on stage. So it works. The whole process works really well, but in my opinion, and it's only worked really well once you remove a direct sales intention. and then for some reason, it just works, right? And then you got to have the tenacity because those lines do stay flat for a very, very long time sometimes. And then you have an episode that goes 10,000 views in a day, and the next one has 2, right? And it's just is what it is sometimes. So
you're like, I don't understand. I didn't do anything different.
Right. What's the craziest podcast that you got to create?
Ooh.
Or work on?
Oh, I don't know about craziest. I mean, we have a podcast where she interviews. She's a well-known wellness yoga influencer. She has like 1 million followers on Instagram. California Almond sponsors her show. She interviews some pretty famous people. We get to record those live in person sometimes, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
We also have a podcast, which was one of our first clients, Fearless Mindset. He's had some pretty interesting people in the security space, ex-government people, people that we couldn't do video and had to change names and stuff like that. Wow. So. Yeah.
It's like an old 60 Minutes episode where they're blurred out and change the voice. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
So we've had some interesting stuff like that. That's a very successful show that, he's pretty much owned his space, and it's opened so many doors for him, for his business in a way that, was not part of the original plan.
Right.
He's a known thought leader in his space now, direct result of the podcast.
Awesome.
It's hard to say, man. We've got about 75 shows that we manage. So don't tell anybody, but I don't listen to all of them.
You can't listen to all of them. It gets pretty challenging. So SalesCast is not your first company that you founded, right?
No, it's fourth.
And you're the co-founder of it. What were some of the industry? I think if I read correctly, you had 4 companies total that you founded or were part of. Can you tell us a little about each one of those really? Just like, the highlights.
Yep. So I started an IT VAR business in 2010 with my wife, scaled that from 0 to 5 million in 26 months. I still have that company today, but it doesn't require much of my time at all.
Right.
And then I started a unified communications business, which I scaled from 0 to 6,000 users in like 2 years, recently exited that company. And then for a very short, brief period of time, I had a little marketing agency that I basically was not for me, not a successful venture at all. And then started SalesCast almost 2 years ago. And we've been growing like crazy every single month and, growing our team. We're just hit like 20 employees. We're going to hire 5 or 6 more people in the next couple of months.
Okay. Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about that transition story from you had a little marketing company for a little while and then that goes into sales? Is that the catalyst to start SalesCast, or was that this isn't working, we're going to figure something else out?
Yeah. So that business started kind of out of like a need. So with the unified communications business, a lot of our strategy was partners. So we had channel partners that sold our product to their customers. Right. And none of them knew how to market our product. So we would help them, spin up pages, landing pages, websites, content, and they would pay us, and then they, would send us referrals and stuff like that. And I just hated that business.
They're paying you to market the products that they're selling for you?
Yeah, because they would want us to basically run marketing campaigns for them. So, I didn't like that business at all. So it wasn't for me. So I shut that down. And then through the unified communications business, I had met Chris, who's my co-founder of SalesCast. He worked for a growth marketing agency that did some work for us. And then we lost touch and got reconnected. He invited me on his podcast. It was the first podcast I've ever been on, had a great experience. Said, hey, I think I want to start a podcast. He helped me get that podcast off the ground. We had so much fun working together. We worked well together. That podcast, we were doing a crazy frequency. It was a daily podcast, which just wasn't the original intention. And then we thought that podcast was going to help grow the unified communications business, but it didn't. Doesn't work extremely well in a highly transactional product. Works really well where it's more of a longer sales cycle, more consultative sell, more of a relationship type sell. And the thing that kept coming up with those people is like, oh, I think I want to start a podcast. Can you help me? Like, how do I get started?
Right.
Like, oh, I think we're kind of onto something here. And so then that's when we launched SalesCast.
Okay. So you launched SalesCast you had the demand first and then you just started taking the clients and then figuring out the products and services that wrap around that.
Yeah.
And then today, SalesCast is a 100% done for you podcast platform.
Correct.
Is platform the right thing or service?
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
but they still supply the talent, correct? Or do you supply the talent for their podcast as well?
So they are the talent.
Okay.
They are the talent. We have one that has like a hired talent, but for the most part, they are the talent. Yeah.
So they're the talent and the executive producer, and you're everything else.
We basically produce the show. So we're doing everything.
Right.
They show up, they hit record, we take care of the rest.
They write the check and show up. That's it.
That's it.
Nothing else. Okay.
Yeah.
And do they show up to your studio or do they do it all?
Most
remotely?
do virtual, but we do have a studio in Orange County. So some people, we occasionally have clients who will fly in to launch their show. And then we do have clients who occasionally will fly in, do a bunch of recordings, for the month, maybe in one day. And then we do have some local clients who come in on a regular basis.
Fantastic. Are you going to be at Podfest next month in Orlando?
I will not be, only because I have a newborn.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So
boy or girl?
I have my girl. My daughter is 5 weeks old. So not a ton of traveling here in this household.
And that's your fourth child, right?
Fourth and final.
Fourth and final. I'm 2 and done. I had to quit that game at the second boy or the second kid. So I got a boy and a girl. It is a lot of fun, but it is a challenge when you're starting businesses and running businesses and you also have them in the back of your head and you know that you've got to take big risks to move your company forward that might not always work the way you intend them to work. But it's a challenge when you got the kids at home and the wife and everything else. But do you find that they're a support system for you in these ventures? I mean, your wife was your partner, right? So that's got to help.
Yeah. I mean, my wife still, I seek counsel from her on a lot of things, a lot of times, very often. She's now the CEO of the household. And sometimes it might feel like she has 5 kids instead of 4 with me.
Yeah.
So she does a lot, and, but, I mean, my kids push me, a little bit of my background is I grew up raised by a single mom. My dad was never around. So being able to provide my kids a life that I never had is a big part of what drives me to do what I do.
Fantastic. And you got a guy out there that wants to start a podcast. He doesn't know where to start. You're an option for them. How would they get in contact with you?
The best place, honestly, is to go to our community. We have 400 podcasters in there. There's tons of resources, everything that people need to know to get started. If they're like, hey, this all sounds overwhelming and we might just want to hire you, they can figure that out in there. But that is a great place to get started. And then go to salescast.community and that will get them access to our free podcast community.
Salescast.community. Absolutely free for anybody to go. So you're giving people a community on how to do this without you.
Yes.
Right. And then if they say, hey, I don't want to do this without you, then they can go on and just hire you and then you take care of all the stuff. Do you help them come up with ideas for the content as well? Or like when you're producing that original, do they come to you with an idea and say, hey, this is it? Or they come to you and say, hey, I'm a bakery, right? And I want to start a podcast and I don't even know what to talk about. Do you help them come up with that idea?
Yep. So we create all the strategy as well. It's a bit of a collaborative process. Sometimes, hey, we might say that's a bad idea, or we might say, hey, have you considered this? Or they might have some ideas that we might need to flush out a little bit more. So it's a very collaborative process through the launch. And then we also are meeting on a regular basis for strategy and coaching. So how to get better as a host, ways to drive revenue, ways to improve content, whatever the case is, we're meeting with people on a regular basis, driving the whole strategy of the show as a whole.
Right. My advice there is on the continued education. If you're going to go down this path, be ready to do a ton of self-reflection, just all the time, right? Because you're putting yourself out there for the whole world to watch and criticize you. And you've got to really be just comfortable with that and tons of personal growth and self-reflection and just being okay with what you put out. Because it can be challenging and it can be scary, but my opinion is that it's wildly worth it. It's one of the most fun things that I've ever worked on in my life. And I've worked on a lot of really cool stuff. So this has been, having the Clicks and Bricks podcast has been just a treat for me. And if anybody out there wants to start a podcast and they don't know how to do it, SalesCast.community would be a great place to start, right? So
Absolutely.
Fantastic, Collin. Do you have anything you would like to share with the audience? Personal notes, some motivational stuff for the guy that wants to get started or lady that wants to get started?
Yeah, I mean, you said it, like just get started. Stop overthinking it. You're not going to be Joe Rogan overnight, whether you like him or hate him.
Right.
You're not going to have the perfect name. You're not going to have the perfect podcast. Like, perfect is an illusion. Like, just get started, and then you can improve and make it better over time.
Yeah, and if you fall, get back up, brush off your knees, and keep going.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Thank you, Collin, for your time today. I very much appreciate it.
Thank you.
That's it for today's show, folks. If you'd like to join my text line community, the number is 314-370-2871. All you have to do to join that text line is send me any question about business or technology. I'll do all the research, and I'll give you an absolutely free, totally unbiased answer. Get to work.